You get a big contract and you get a big contract. You want 71 million? Sure. You want 78 million? Awesome. We're just handing out big contracts left and right to open the 25-26 NHL season. Welcome into the NHL Insider Notebook here on the BR app, as well as streaming live on YouTube. We're taking your comments, questions, concerns, anything you want to get to in terms of the opening of the NHL season. I'm here to answer it for you. I'm here to listen. So throw those questions into the chat and let's make this a fun stream. So, Montreal Canadiens, incredibly well positioned after signing reigning Calder Trophy winner and Rookie of the Year Lane Hutson to a massive 8-year deal at $8.85 million on Monday morning. What a sigh of relief from all parties involved. A sigh of relief from Lane Hutson that he doesn't have this big money deal hanging over his head this season as he plays out and tries to follow up with a terrific sophomore campaign. And a huge sigh of relief for the Montreal Canadiens because, well, they've got the future of their team locked and loaded for the next foreseeable future. I mean, take a look at these guys that are under contract for the long haul. Cole Caulfield till 2031, Nick Suzuki 2030, Juraj Slafkovsky 2033, Noah Dobson 2033, Caden Gooley, maybe the biggest value on the board, 2031, and now Lane Hutson 2034, soon to follow at some point in time, Ivan Demidov. And oh, by the way, in case you thought the Canadiens were done with all that great work that they've done, fitting everything into their team salary cap structure, the Canadiens on Tuesday, the day of their home opener, announced new contract extensions for their president of hockey operations, Jeff Gorton, and their general manager, Kent Hughes, both signing twin 5-year contract extensions on this Tuesday, October 14th. And it just goes to show you, brick by brick by brick. I know that's actually the slogan of the Philadelphia Flyers this year, but I've been saying that for years about the Montreal Canadiens. Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton stacking one smart decision upon the other, and then all of a sudden you look back and you've got a tremendous foundation in place. It started with drafting. It has now followed up with development. The fun part about what Montreal is building is that we're really just starting to see this team rise above the surface of the water. Yes, they made the playoffs last year, perhaps a year early, but they're a team that competes. They've got a great coach in Marty St. Louis, and we're still not seeing the fruits of their labor on their blue line just yet. David Reinbacher is coming. Yes, they traded Logan Mailloux, but Samuel Bolduc looks pretty good to start the year for the Canadiens as well, as a perfect fit in the bumper spot on their power play. They have more defensemen coming in their pipeline, and that's what gets you really excited if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan. So lots happening in terms of the league and contract extensions, and the Canadiens in the last 48 hours locking up 3 more very important parts of the puzzle. David in our BR app wants to know, should the Golden Knights sign Dorofeyev now long-term, and how much is he worth? You know, David, I figured at some point in time someone would ask that question, but man, Dorofeyev is a dog, isn't he? He just scores and scores. He competes, and what a find for the Vegas Golden Knights he has been. I think the smart play would try and be to get in front of that, and the Vegas Golden Knights have been very good at that, David. If you look in their history, whether it's Zach Whitecloud or go through some of the other recent players that they've had, they seem to get them just on the cusp of them breaking out. It's almost like they're seeing it firsthand in practice and a handful of games, and they're saying, oh no, we can't let that go on any longer. We got to get that guy signed to a deal before he blows up with even bigger numbers. Brett Howden is another good example. They've really done some smart things there in managing their cap because they've got their big ticket items, as we know, with now Jack Eichel and Mitch Marner, and they've got to find a way to find value in other places. And the only way to really do that is to convince players before they're ready that, hey, this security, this life-changing security, take that, because man, it feels good to have that solidified and guaranteed. Nicholas in our YouTube wants to know, will the New York Rangers sign the bread man or will they let him walk? TBD. That's my answer, Nicholas. And the reason for that is not because I don't know the answer. It's because I think they're perfectly comfortable waiting to see how this season goes. Can you answer for me, Nicholas, with any degree of certainty in the first few games with Mike Sullivan at the helm, whether or not the Rangers are going to be a playoff team this year? If they are, and if this looks like a very promising core is built and ready to continue on and challenging, then I think there's a good chance that they can find a short-term deal or shorter-term deal for Artemi Panarin to stay. But short of that, if they either fall short of making the playoffs or if they're a team that is not very competitive once they're in there, then I think they're going to let him walk, because this is a guy, for better or worse, for fair or unfair, and I would say on the surface, Artemi Panarin has been one of the best free agent signings, top 5 in NHL history. But fans in New York and elsewhere seem to want to point at the idea that he's not a player that you can win with in the postseason. I tend to take that with a grain of salt because he is so incredibly talented. Why is it that the Tampa Bay Lightning can win with Nikita Kucherov? Why is it that everyone said that about Alex Ovechkin before he won? Why is it that everyone said that about Steve Yzerman before he won? It takes that breakthrough moment. It's going to take a supporting cast. It's going to take all the right pieces coming together. I'm not down on Artemi Panarin at all, but I don't think the Rangers are signing up for more years of it if they don't at least have tangible success in front of them. Lee in the BR app wants to know any rumors on if the Preds are going to add to their offense. I mean, they could use it, and they could really use some centers. We've known that for a while. I think similarly, in a different way, Barry Trotz wants to find out more about his team, and are they going to defy the experts once again? A couple years ago, saying this is a team that's going to, win the Central Division, to not making the playoffs. I don't think he wants to prove the experts right 3 years in a row. Sean wants to know, New York Islanders fire sale, trade everything but Schaefer. I guess I get where you're coming from, but that certainly wasn't the plan of the previous general manager who had believed so much in this core. And I don't think we know enough about Matthew Darche yet and what he thinks of this team. I'm sure he's going through an evaluation process to understand what he believes they are before we start to see some of those moves. And I think the list of players that really get everyone excited is not really all that crazy long. So they've got their work cut out for them on Long Island if they can't bounce back into form. Aviator on the app wants to know, what do the Canes do at goalie with Kochetkov going on IR? They were already super thin. And yeah, did you see Freddie Anderson throwing up the arm, trying to brace himself for contact on Saturday night against the Flyers, earning that goaltender interference call? Whether you liked it or loved it, he was still in the crease and there was still contact, and the NHL has made it clear that they are going to protect their goalies as long as they're in the crease. That said, that looked to me like a goaltender who knows that he needs to stay healthy, because any seeming contact, he is down and out. And I would say that the Canes have been very aggressive with their third goalies over the years, even if Kochetkov was healthy, to try and support that, knowing how much those guys have been in and out of the lineup, both of them over the last year or so, Freddie Anderson longer. But I think they're a team that watches the waiver wire very closely when it comes to goalies, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out and try and make something happen. So let's talk about some deals signed and offers declined. We talked previously about Lane Hudson getting his deal done. We've talked about Jack Eichel and his massive extension with the Vegas Golden Knights, a true partnership in every sense of the word. Could have gotten more on the open market, still got a healthy amount from the Vegas Golden Knights to make him a very well-paid player for the remainder of his career, most likely. Where does that leave Logan Cooley and Utah Mammoth? They're off to a decent start, albeit another injury. Man, that's a tough one, having Sean Durzi go out for a month. I was saying Sean Durzi and John Marino, that wasn't going to happen again this year. They weren't going to miss 2 of their top 5 defensemen for 5 months. Maybe not 5, but at least not 1. That part has been surprising. But in terms of a start for the Mammoth, they know that they need to win more 1-goal games on home ice. They need to win more on home ice in general. But Logan Cooley turning down 8 years times 9.6 million a year, nearly $77 million, as I reported last week. That's a number north of 10. And I don't think that this decision for Lane Hudson to sign an 8-year deal changes the conversation. When you are committing that long a period of time, and when you are so young, and you're talking about, signing until you're 30 years old and really forking over all of the best years of your career, with the cap rising so incredibly dramatically, and it going to continue to be that way, because if you go back and look at the numbers and the revenue splits and how players are going to be topped up, this season's cap should actually be higher than it is. It's artificially low. That means at some point it's going to get back to that 50-50 revenue split, which the NHL and NHLPA have. Signing now, the last thing you want to do is feel like you're playing on a bargain contract in years 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the deal. And so he understands that. His camp, led by the Bartlett family, they understand that as well. And they're not really in a rush to get something done, knowing that it's going to take a real solid offer from Utah Mammoth to get this done in season. And if not, they're perfectly comfortable parking it. I think the Mammoth felt like they put a solid play on the table, but they don't have any $10 million AAV players. Some other teams don't as well, and they're trying to keep it within their own team structure like the Canadiens have had, and like that conversation we had to lead off this show. But I'm not certain that they're going to get, or in fact, I should say, I am certain that unless there's a dramatic change in heart from the Cooley camp, that is not how this is going to play out. Scotty Moe says, Frank, did you watch the last playoff one with Panarin? He was petrified out there. I did. Scotty, I echoed what everyone is saying is the criticism. I voiced it in the show. Has he looked like that at every point in the playoffs? I don't know that that's true. And really, one of the things that I really admire about Chris Drury and the way that he's run the Rangers is go back to when they lost in the Eastern Conference Final to Florida. They put a stake in the ground and they said, we're not good enough. Tried to trade Kreider, tried to trade Trouba. Obviously, that ended up taking longer than they wanted, but both moved on, traded Keandre Miller. Boom, 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 right? They're making things happen. They're changing it up. They needed to drastically change their personnel to get to a better place. I don't think they're there just yet, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Artemi Panarin is part of, not the focal part, but part of a team that does get over the hump. And that's why I'm saying you have to keep an open mind, even though, Scotty, you seem to indicate that that is not the way that it should be. And you say that Logan Cooley should get a grip on reality. I think he has a very firm grasp on reality, given that the team is offering him $77 million and he's saying no. That's a number, that's an AAV, Scotty, that's going to start with a 10, I would very likely imagine. Talking some CBA and salary cap updates as well. As we mentioned, time is on the team side here, not the players, just in terms of structuring deals. Look at the deal that Lane Hudson signed just on Monday. First year of the deal, which is not this season, but next season, starting in July, he gets a lump sum $11 million check as a signing bonus, followed by a $1 million a year salary for the first few years of the deal. Why is that important? Everyone understands the time value of money. Everyone understands that getting more now is better for the long haul due to the way everything compounds in the market. And also, just think in general economic terms, inflation and the cost of everything continuing to go up. So it's more beneficial to get your hands on money early. What does that mean? How does that relate to the NHL? Well, the ability to front load contracts, the ability to load up in signing bonus. There are new limitations and guardrails in place in the new collective bargaining agreement, in addition to the idea that you can no longer sign a deferred salary money deal. So that deferred money thing went away on October 6th. The other stuff is going away starting next July 1st, and the guardrails are changing. If the players want to sign an extension and craft it a very specific way to take advantage of some of those things that have been on the table for them, then it's at their disposal to do so. And maybe they try and get a deal like that done in May or June. And that's certainly obviously on the table for someone like Cooley. But when it comes to other changes coming in place after that, it's going to be a little bit more stringent. So just something to keep in mind in the back of your mind as teams think about this. The longer these drag on, the more the structure and the way the deal is paid out benefits NHL teams, not the players. That is a give back from players to owners as part of the new CBA. MNH in the app says, are the Sabres going to do anything to change the atmosphere in the club? Man, they need it. You heard Tage Thompson after Monday's loss, dropping them to 0-3 on the season. He said, negativity breeds negativity. The problem for the Sabres is that the negativity has been flowing for a while. So much so that JJ Peterka asked out of his deal, or asked out of Buffalo, I should say, and they obliged him with a trade last June. When you trade away a 23-year-old first-line winger who scored 75 points and you're a team that's supposed to be on the rise, how do you make those two things make sense? So the negativity had existed for a while. The Sabres did nothing over the summer to change that. They didn't bring in any new exciting pieces to make everyone feel confident like this can be a team that could take a step forward. They didn't change their coaching staff. They haven't changed their general manager. There were chants of fire Adams for fire Kevin Adams referenced during Monday night's game. It has been ugly. Frustration is mounting, and it may even be boiling over. What are they going to do to change the atmosphere? I would say start at the very top. So, look, that's where you have to begin. I'd start, you can't change the owner. Terry Pegula owns the club, but it's not a coincidence to me that since he took over as owner, even though he's figured things out on the football side with the Buffalo Bills in a big way, it starts with personnel. It starts with Bean, their general manager. It starts with Sean McDermott, their head coach on the football side. They don't have that same kind of leadership. Kevin Adams came over from the business side of the team. Yes, he was an NHL player. Yes, he's a sharp guy. Yes, he understands the game, but he's never spent a day in an NHL front office on the executive side of running a hockey team and gets handed the reins of being general manager. We're in year 6 of that experience. It's personnel, it's head coach, it's players. It's all of those things wrapped into one, and the Buffalo Sabres need changes. They flat out need to change. Lee in the BR app says, what are the biggest names possibly on the move at center sooner rather than later? Good luck, Lee. Everyone wants a center. Go ask the Vancouver Canucks how they can get a center. Not on a big name perspective, but one name that I have been keying in on over the last few days to start the season is Hendrix Lapierre from the Washington Capitals. Center has been healthy scratch to start the season. Obviously a first-round pick talent. Can fly. What do the Caps do with Hendrix Lapierre down the middle? Is he a guy that they could maybe flip for someone that has a little bit of term that could play down the middle and fit with their group for the longer haul? But join the long list of teams that would like to improve themselves at the center position. Scotty, in a similar vein, talking about the Sabres, wants to know, when does Tage Thompson become available? I kind of felt this way about JJ Peterka, but if you're trading Tage Thompson, you might as well pack it in. Where do you even go from here? So certainly something to consider. How about some early injury woes? The Ottawa Senators announcing this morning that forward Brady Tkachuk will be out at least 4 weeks. It's unclear yet as to whether surgery is required, but an ugly turn of events after a pretty dirty play from Roman Josi in Monday's matinee in Canada's capital. Just an unfortunate turn of events for the Ottawa Senators. No other way to say it. Tough hit, shaking his hand, looked to be a suspected wrist injury, and you know the Tkachuk boys are tough as nails. He's not sitting out because he wants to. He's missing 4 weeks, and he's just biting to get back out on the ice. So tough one for the Sens, tough one for Brady Tkachuk, but they're far from alone. We know the injuries from the preseason, Alexander Barkov and Corey Perry, and go on and on. But then add to the list Vincent Trocheck week to week with the New York Rangers. We talked about Sean Durzi missing a month. Dmitry Kulikov from the Panthers also needs surgery. So if you're the Cats alone, you've got Barkov out. You've got Dmitry Kulikov out on their back end. You've got Matthew Tkachuk out until December. By the way, what is the Tkachuk family going to do if they're not shuttling to games between Brady and Matthew Tkachuk? I guess that's time for a beach vacation. I don't know. If you're Keith and Chantel Tkachuk, you've got lots of time on your hands because both of your boys are out for at least the next month. So tough news for the Tkachuks. Tough news for the league overall. I don't know what to pin that to. It feels like the same volume of injuries that we normally have, maybe just some more star players getting wrapped up this time as well. And keeping an eye on Lucas Raymond, of course, who left the Red Wings game against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Monday. Let's take a peek at the standings so far and have a little discussion on who's for real and who's not, who's a contender and who's a pretender so far to start the season. And I have some questions about a few teams that have gotten off to hot starts. The Boston Bruins, 3-1. The Detroit Red Wings, big bounce back, 2-1. You've got the Nashville Predators, who we talked about, 2-0-1. The Seattle Kraken, 2-0. Those are all really interesting starts. And yes, they're really just that, because we know this is a marathon and not a sprint. 82 games is no joke, and the cream usually rises to the top. I'll say this, and it's not to knock anyone, but my mentor and the GOAT, Bob McKenzie from TSN, the original hockey insider, would always say, if a team looks good for the first 3 weeks, so be it. But once you get past that, that's when you know, once you get past 3 weeks, that's when the standings start to crystallize a bit and that team is for real. Not willing to make any declarations yet. I think the Bruins are a true bounce back candidate. I think their defense is so much better than they showed, and just getting some league average goaltending from Jeremy Swayman would really help. I love the response from the Detroit Red Wings after getting called out first game of the season by Todd McClellan, who did not mince words and absolutely crushed his players after game 1. 2 wins over the Leafs, who, by the way, not only look slow, but were already in some ways called out by their coach and Craig Berube, who did not hold back in saying that he needs more from Willie Nylander. What about Seattle, new coaching staff, and the Preds getting off to a hot start? Still early. The Preds have talent, we know that, but things got off to such a sideways start last year that they really struggled. And speaking of negativity around the Sabres, that's been surrounding the Nashville Predators for a while. So it's fun in the first 8 days of the season. There's always so much happening. There's always, teams getting off to unexpected starts. And then all of a sudden, 2 to 3 weeks from now, that begins to crystallize a bit, and you can almost take it to the bank, because what you see 3 weeks in is essentially what you get. We'll take our last one from Flower, who's in the app. He says, do the Islanders keep Patrick Waugh around as a veteran presence for Schaefer if they slide through the year? Not sure. I don't know how to answer that just yet, Flower, because I don't know what the relationship is like yet between Matthew Darche and Patrick Waugh. Obviously, 2 Frenchmen, 2 Quebecois. You would think have some kind of connection or prior relationship. He didn't hire him, and it's always typically the general manager who gets to play that card if he inherits a coach. I also don't think that the coach is what's holding back the Islanders. I think it's more of a personnel issue with the players on the ice, but have to say that I really like what I see from Matthew Schaefer so far. He's just given them a real shot in the arm of excitement and adrenaline for a clear talent. That was never in question. It was more so, could Matthew Schaefer remain on the ice? And he looks damn good so far. That'll do it for today's edition of the NHL Insider Notebook here on the BR app. It was so great to hang with you guys for nearly a half an hour. We'll be back next Tuesday, 1:30 Eastern. You know where to find us. Until then, have a great week and enjoy the games, everyone.